Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Since you four can't see the monsters, I'll head up the tower by myself. In the meantime, you can go look for intel to bring back to the camp, Shiro said as she dusted her hands. Since she was finally able to claim the ass of another monster, her mood lightened up considerably. Boo-dash. Alex, are you forgetting who's the strongest here? Shiro grinned and walked up the tower without even looking back. The group looked at each other before sighing. They had to agree with her since they weren't able to do anything during the last fight. Not only could they not see the monster, but they weren't sure that they could damage it even if they could see it. That was due to the collateral damage caused by the fight between the two. When one of the attacks landed near them, they had an instinctive feeling that they would die instantly if it had hit them. Glancing at her back, they sighed before leaving the main hall. As for Shiro, she easily took care of any cultist that had approached her. Now that I think about it, a dragon's reverse scale is their weak point. Would a shadow dragon have the same weak point, and does it even have an anus? Shiro thought whilst ripping the head off the body of a cultist. Throwing the corpse behind her, Shiro glanced out the tower window and saw that she was still quite a distance away from the roof. Who said I had to follow the path inside the tower? Shiro grinned before leaping out of the window. Grabbing the ledge of the window, she flipped her body upwards. Style Phantom Arts, second Phantom plus, third Phantom plus, faded snow movement. Her body flickered up the side of the building. She would either grab onto the protrusion from the wall or make her own footholds from ice. In a few short moments, she jumped over the roof and saw several cultists around a formation that was powering the dragon. Her eyes scanned the roof quickly and made a dagger for each of the cultists. Twisting her body in midair, she threw the daggers with pinpoint precision and killed them in an instant. Asterisk rumble. Ping. With the lack of cultists that were powering the formation shattered into spots of light and set the dragon free. Asterisk roar. SSS. Shiro quickly covered her ears from the power of the roar. Falling onto the roof, she wasn't able to stand properly and fell onto one knee. Opening one of her eyes with some difficulty, as she was still disoriented by the roar, she saw that the dragon had swiped its tail towards her. Widening her eyes, she quickly flicked her wrist as several layers of ice walls erected in front of her. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Tisk. She clicked her tongue and quickly flipped her body away from the tail. Even though this trial is low-level, the dragon is still a dragon, huh? She muttered as she saw the tag above the dragon's head. Calamity Dragon. LVL? HP. MP. During this, she also took the chance to observe the dragon's appearance. The dragon looked ethereal as the body constantly shifted between mist form and solid state. Not only that, but lustrous black scales decorated its body. Blood-red eyes and dark spikes covered its entire body. That right, the dragon wasn't limited to only one pair of eyes. Its entire body was filled with eyes. Damn it, I should have known that a dragon of its stature wouldn't be low-leveled. Shiro cursed inwards. However, the dragon wasn't about to let her leave without a fight. Rearing his head back, the miasma gathered around his mouth as she realized that it was about to release a dragon breath. Not on my watch. Shiro narrowed her eyes as she gathered mana around her palm and clutched her hand into a fist. Asterisk kish 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 kish. Several magic circles erected around the dragon as ice chains lashed towards it in large quantities. Some of the chains even combined to form a serpent. Asterisk bang. However, the moment the chains wrapped around the dragon's body, they broke apart with a simple flex of his muscles. Making a quick decision, Shiro made an ice sword and dashed towards the dragon. Asterisk boom. A black beam of energy suddenly appeared in her vision as Shiro knew that it was the dragon's breath. A magic circle appeared under her, creating a huge tower of ice that propelled her into the air and away from the breath. Silently wiping away her sweat that had gathered due to how close it was, Shiro looked towards the dragon once more. Asterisk KRR. She quickly made an ice platform to propel herself towards the dragon before it could even recover from using its breath. Asterisk Poochie. Asterisk roar. Plunging her sword into one of the eyes, she twisted her body and ripped it out. Enraged by her action, all of his eyes glowed with an ominous red. Asterisk boom. Beams of energy shot out from all of his irises as Shiro had to quickly bend her body back to avoid the beam of light. During this, she created 2 ice spears and stabbed them into the ground. Asterisk KRR. Using them as a focal point, Shiro encased the entire roof in ice to trigger her ice field affinity. Not only that, but the ice caused the dragon to slip, giving her the perfect opportunity to attack it. She could see that the dragon had some properties similar to a spirit, so theoretically, she could use the fire of life against the dragon. Skating along the ice, she flicked her wrist and created a great sword in her hand. Activating the fire of life, the side of the sword lit up in green flames. The moment the fire appeared, the shadows that covered the dragon's body flickered away in repulsion and fear. Great, Shiro thought with a grin. In-style Phantom Arts, third Phantom, counterweight Phantom. Asterisk bang. She slammed the sword towards the dragon's leg, but it quickly dodged backwards and avoided the flames. So this does work. In that case then, try to dodge this. Shiro grinned. Frozen Hell series, Azure Hellfire. Blue flames lit up all around the roof, and it seemed like an army of fireflies had appeared. Asterisk click. With a snap of her fingers, the fire shifted from the ghostly blue into a lush green. Asterisk boom 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 boom. In a manner not unlike the skill bombardment that Alarakasadan had won during the auction, the life fires shot towards the dragon. Covering his entire body with his wing, the dragon tried to shield itself from the fire with little to no success. Every time the fire struck against the wing, it would leave a scorched mark that caused the dragon's blood to ooze out of the wound. But before she could even rejoice at this fact, the wound had already healed back up. Understanding that she was too weak to affect it, even with her fire of life, the dragon glared at her and ignored the fire that would strike against his body. Air, can we talk this out? Shiro asked. Asterisk roar. The dragon clawed his way towards Shiro as each of his steps would rip a chunk of the tower out. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro stood her ground and released her killing intent at the dragon. Asterisk bang. The dragon stopped dead in its tracks and shivered in fear. Unfortunately for Shiro, the dragon remembered how she was too weak to do anything. So even though she had such a strong killing intent, he was able to ignore it entirely. However, that pause was all she needed since she wanted to stop his momentum. Frozen Hell series, Frozen Slumber. 6 magic circles appeared around the dragon, but this time, the chains didn't break easily. Although it did, however, put a lot of stress on Shiro. Gritting her teeth, she started to force her hands together in order to freeze the dragon. Asterisk FUUU. The longer she held her skill, the bigger the blizzard was. From an outsider's perspective, even though they couldn't see that dragon, they could see the chains wrap around something invisible. Not only that, but the blizzard was almost impossible to miss. The party, who had separated from her earlier, felt sweat drip down their spine when they saw the power of her skill. I didn't think that she would be this strong, Alex muttered, seeing the blizzard. Guys, just a thought, Emily suddenly said. Go on. So we know that she's strong, right? And that this is one of the most powerful skills she had demonstrated so far. How has she not killed the enemy yet? She said as they paused in shock. If she was still fighting even after all the skills they saw fly past the roof, that meant that she was struggling with the dragon. But we can't see the dragon. How do you expect us to help her out in this situation? Felicia frowned. We see the dragon like how she does, Nathan said as he captured their attention. How? Think about it. If the cultist could summon different types of monsters, some of which we can't see due to what Shiro had shown us earlier, don't you think that they have a way to see the monsters themselves? Nathan suggested. The group looked at each other in surprise. All right, new plan. We interrogate a cultist for some information. Limit it to 2 minutes of torture. If we can't get anything out of them, don't waste time and instead search their bodies for something that could potentially help us. Alex said seriously. Got it. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Meanwhile, Shiro was still struggling against Calamity Dragon due to the fact that she could do barely any damage to the dragon. His natural healing was several tiers above her damage output, so much that she cursed repeatedly at the fact that a monster like this was actually in such a low-level dungeon. Even with her Ice Field affinity helping her with the MP regeneration, her MP consumption was simply too large. SK. F*** CK off already? Shiro shouted out as this was the nth time that she had tried to retreat from this fight, but the dragon was simply too strong. His physical attributes were many times above hers to the point that he is just toying with her now. Ignoring her cries, the dragon flexed his claw and sent several strands of miasma lashing towards her. Twisting her body in midair, Shiro narrowly avoided the strands of miasma and landed roughly on her feet. At this point, she had been tossing and turning so much that she looked no different from a beggar. One that looked extremely beautiful, of course. All right, fine. This miss will go all out against you even if I die. Shiro shouted out as the mana around her went berserk. Pseudo-ice elemental armor. Ice armor wrapped around her as she tightened her grip around the spiked chains. Glaring at the dragon, she released 10% of her killing intent. Boom. Due to her passive skill, her killing intent also translated to freezing power. 10% of her killing intent was enough to cause a huge blizzard to appear. The sheer size of the blizzard had coated the entire main tower of Silvermoon, keeping a sheet of snow. So this is her power. The commander muttered as he watched the situation from the back lines. The sudden appearance of the huge blizzard had shocked them to the core and had told them about her power, that of which was so strong that it could even affect the weather around her. Tell the soldiers to pull their weights. They're getting shown up by a 13-year-old. He shouted out before giving the top of the tower another glance. If all mages had her kind of power, the casualties of the current fight between them and the cultists would be through the roof. Meanwhile, the party had managed to get some clues about how they could see and take care of the dragon. So if what he tells us is correct, there should be a potion of sorts in their storeroom that allows us to see the dragon. In the storeroom should also be a few items that helps them control the dragon, so we can use that to help retrain the dragon while Shiro takes that moment to kill the dragon. Nathan said as he threw the passed-out cultists to the side. All right, we need to go as fast as possible. From the way things look up there, Shiro's reaching her limit as well. Alex replied. They could feel the berserk mana surge around above them, but at the same time, the power was weakening at a much faster pace than before. They weren't wrong, as the elemental armors were always a trump card of sorts. The armor chews through the MP of mages like nothing, since they don't consume values, but instead percentages. Shiro's face was completely emotionless as she was using 110% of her concentration. Right now, it was an all-or-nothing situation. Without a moment's delay, Shiro charged forwards and whipped her spiked chains towards the dragon. Wrapping around the dragon's head, she gave them a gentle tug, which in turn launched her toward the dragon's head. In-style Phantom Arts, Third Phantom, Counterweight Phantom. Poochie. Just before the collision, she retracted one of the chains and changed it into a sword before stabbing it into the hard outer shell of the dragon. Only this time with more success. Twisting her sword, green fire suddenly exploded out from the edges and into the dragon's flesh, searing it from the inside out. Roar. The dragon cried out in pain as his inner defenses were much weaker when compared to his quickly regenerating outer defense. Although he could still heal all of the damage that she had caused, it would take a little longer than healing an outside wound. Seeing her attack deal more damage than before, Shiro narrowed her eyes and flipped off the head of the dragon. During this, she had also flicked both her chains upwards, which caused 2 shallow cuts along the shoulder area of the dragon. Not giving it the chance it needs to heal, Shiro flexed her fingers and sent several live fire-coated daggers into the wounds. Bursting into a ball of flames, the fire hindered the dragon's regeneration. However, while this was happening, the dragon had already swept his tail towards Shiro. Shifting her body slightly, Shiro used the momentum of the tail to make some room between her and the dragon. Slamming her palms down, the spiked chains on her wrist drilled into the ground. A magic circle enlarged around the dragon as fissures could be seen forming slowly. Asterisk rumble. Bang! Several huge chains appeared around the dragon and wrapped around him before dragging him downwards. Twisting her palms, she sent mana through the chains, causing them to set ablaze with life fire. In addition to this, hooks shot out from each segment of the chains, which prevented the dragon from removing the chains as easily. Standing back up, Shiro had to stop herself from falling backwards. She placed her hand on her chest and tried to soothe the pain that she was feeling. After a short moment of rest, she flicked her finger upwards as ice started to form above the dragon. A giant guillotine made from ice appeared above the dragon. Slamming her palms downwards, the guillotine followed her movements and attempted to decapitate the dragon. However, the dragon only scoffed for a moment as the eyes all over his body glowed ominously. A black light filled her vision, and once it cleared, she saw the dragon split itself into smaller copies, which allowed it to escape his bindings along with avoiding the falling guillotine. Furrowing her brows, Shiro had to deactivate her pseudo-ice elemental armor, since any longer and her MP would be completely emptied out. Right now, her best option was to let her passive work its magic and regenerate her MP. Each of the dragons glanced at each other before slowly merging together. It knew that if it split itself, it would give her more chances to harm it during combat due to the fact that his power is shared between all of the copies. He would only use this when he is in trouble. He could tell the potential danger from her attack just now as his instincts were warning him. Even if he could regenerate, it would not be easy. But the reality of the situation was that he didn't need to worry at all. Shiro was out of options and could only struggle to even stand straight right now. "Ha! You tenacious little shit," she cursed whilst glaring at the Calamity Dragon. Taking a deep breath, Shiro crouched into a low stance and kept her eye on the dragon. Since she couldn't use her mana right now since it's slowly regenerating, she was going to use her phantom arts to the best of her abilities. Heh, it isn't often that this miss is pushed to the limits. Make it worthwhile, would you, darling? Shiro grinned in an attempt to provoke the dragon. Clearly it worked, since the dragon narrowed the myriad of eyes all over his body. Without warning, it sent a claw swiping towards her. In-style Phantom Arts, 3rd Phantom plus 4th Phantom. Doing a split, Shiro easily ducked under the claw and sent her elbow slamming against the wrist of the dragon. Asterisk bang crack. Due to the fact that 4th Phantom, Internal Feasting Phantom, ignores the outer defenses and attacks the insides, she was able to transmit the force against the wrist and fracture the dragon's bones. Is that all? Flipping her body around and over the arm, Shiro slammed her heel into the forearm. Since in-style Phantom Arts were a movement and hand-to-hand combat-based martial arts, Shiro wasn't able to use it often with weapons. Not to mention, she had her Snowmancer class, so purposefully disarming herself wasn't recommended just to use the martial arts. Plus, with the kind of output her firearms could produce, she didn't need to go into hand-to-hand combat. "Shiro!" A voice suddenly shouted out, grabbing her attention. Asterisk bang. "What the hell do you want?" Shiro shouted back in frustration, since that shout had created a lapse in her concentration. This caused her to miss the timing and couldn't hit the arm of the dragon for the 3rd time. Her punch instead hit the ground and caused a hole to appear on the roof. She had to quickly jump back as the hole was expanding rapidly. "Ah, right, we can help," Alex replied as he and the party spread out a little in order to avoid the dragon's attacks. After interrogating the cultists, they had managed to find a set of potions that will help them see the shadow creatures. After seeing the dragon, they were slightly repulsed by how it looked with the myriad of eyes scattered around his body, but they didn't verbalize their disgust. They could tell that the dragon was on a whole new level, and they needed to end it fast. The dragon we're seeing right now is Walking Calamity. His power is sealed away in another dimension. We need to kill the dragon before all of his power is recovered. Nathan shouted out whilst slashing at the dragon's scales a few times. However, the lack of damage caused him to furrow his brows. "No wonder I'm still alive." Shiro nodded, since a real dragon wouldn't let her live this long. The cultists had an unholy item that will help them control the dragon to a certain degree. "We'll use that and help you kill the dragon." Alex said whilst pulling out the unholy item. Shiro paused in shock as she had seen that item before. Are you sure that's the item? She asked carefully whilst jumping over one of the dragon's attacks. Yes. From the ancient records that we found, as long as we place this item on the dragon, we'll be able to influence the dragon. Alex said seriously as he made sure to keep the item safe. Shiro felt her lips twitch as the unholy item he was talking about is a huge pink fluffy cuff. Who the hell uses BDSM gear to control *King Dragon? Shiro cursed mentally as she held back on the desire to kill whoever created the item. Alright, do you know how to use it? She asked. I'm sure you just put this around the neck, right? I mean, sure, it's a little different from normal cuffs, since it's pink and fluffy, but I'm sure the ancient records aren't wrong. Alex said as he had a complicated expression. It's fine. No matter what happens in the dungeon, it stays in the dungeon. No one needs to know outside of the dungeon, or else the dragon's prideful name would be ruined, she thought to herself. However, she couldn't help but imagine the dragon tied up with some rope, cuffed and chained to a bed, weak and vulnerable to whatever they wanted to do. Pooey, what am I thinking about? Shiro thought and slapped herself out of the daydream. How do we enlarge the cuffs? Because that is not holding back the dragon, she asked. It's said that we can just throw it at the dragon and it'll contain it. Ale replied as he took a. That's it. That's it. Then why the hell are you still holding it? King throw the thing. Ah, right. Alex threw the pair of pink fluffy cuffs towards the dragon, which tried to flee as he understood what the cuffs could do. Get over here. Shiro shouted as 6 chains grabbed the dragon by the wings and forced it down. Boom. The cuffs expanded over the dragon's head and shrunk down into a pink slave collar of sorts. Not only that, but the moment the fluff came into contact with his scales, they hardened up into spikes that easily penetrated the dragon's scales. Roar. The dragon's body twitched in pain as he thrashed around in an attempt to rip the cuff off his body, even to go as far as to start tearing off chunks of flesh. Shiro paled slightly from the damage it was causing as she would have died easily if it had used the same amount of effort in killing her. This only showed her that she was akin to a child that the dragon didn't even need to take seriously. After a short moment, the dragon started to slow down as the luster on his scales started to dim. Weakened Calamity Dragon, LVL 45. HP, 1500, 230/500, 000, 000. MP, 120, 020/100, 000, 000. The *CK? It actually worked? Shiro couldn't help but mutter in surprise. Seeing the dragon weaken to this degree, Shiro made eye contact with the other members of the elite squad and nodded her head. Glancing at her MP bar, she sighed in relief since it should be just enough to kill the dragon. Go! At her command, the party leapt into action. Emily and Felicia retreated and shot out arrow after arrow. Each of the arrows would pierce the intended target without miss. Nathan and Alex, on the other hand, dashed up the spin of the dragon and made cuts all over his body. Due to a certain pink cuff that was sapping the dragon of his strength, his overall physical power was weakened by a lot as well. Hell, if the dragon was like this a few moments earlier, Shiro could have easily soloed it and ended this trial. As the party continued their relentless assault against the dragon, his health was dropping rapidly. Even when it used its dragon breath, Shiro could defend against the breath with a few layers of her reinforced ice walls. After their roles switched, the dragon could only suffer the beatings with no chance of retaliation. Shiro was especially ruthless since she suffered so much in his hands. It was to the point that even her party flinched at the brutality. Every single scale on his back would be ripped out piece by piece. If they regenerated, she would rip them out once more. Roar. The dragon cried out weakly as it could feel his time come to an end. However, Shiro wasn't going to let it have an easy death. Since you like to toy with me this much, this queen will teach you what happens. She shouted out as she dislocated the dragon's wings and ripped them out of their sockets. Roar. I'm not done yet, Shiro shouted, whilst repeating the action with the other wing. Jumping off the back of the dragon, Shiro raised her hands and conjured up 2 hands made from ice and held the dragon in its place. Wait, Shiro, what are you doing? Alex asked. Just watch. It's going to be a surprise, haha. Shiro chuckled darkly as her eyes glowed with a sadistic light. She was going to make sure this dragon died of humiliation. Creating a third arm to lift up the tail, Shiro exposed the dragon's reverse scale. A huge magic circle appeared behind its rear and thrummed with a neon blue light. Both the dragon and the party members could feel the mana surge around the magic circle. Their collective faces paled since they could guess what she was going to do. Asterisk roar. The dragon tried to escape the restraints, but couldn't cause them to budge even a little. Time was short, and it knew it couldn't escape. With no other option, it could only choose to self-destruct in order to avoid humiliation. Don't think about it, Shiro shouted out in anger. She wasn't about to let it escape her revenge. Her instincts controlled her as she knew that she had to stop the self-destruction for 2 reasons. Number 1 is because that means she couldn't pierce his ass, and number 2 is that they would die if it blew up. Naturally, she was doing it for reason 2 and not 1. Cough. In order to self-destruct, one would need to gather the surrounding mana into their bodies and ignite their bodies as a bomb. As long as she could either divert or remove the mana around the dragon so that it couldn't blow up, they'll be fine. An idea popped into her mind as she flicked her wrist. The magic circle started to shift, causing 4 tendrils to extend out of the magic circle and injected themselves into the dragon's body. Asterisk gar. The dragon screamed as it could feel the mana getting redirected into the mana circle. The more it tried to suicide, the faster the magic circle charged up. Shiro, can we talk about this? Why don't we just kill it normally? Alex asked.
Nope.
Asterisk bang. The ice spike pierced the dragon and turned into a famed dish in her past life. Dragon meat on skewers. The moment the dragon died, Shiro was shocked seeing the world pause in its tracks. It was as if someone had instantly tapped the pause button on the world. Furrowing her brows, she ignored the frozen sight of the dragon being skewered and looked towards the party. Well, I suppose it makes sense that this world will end the moment the trial finished. It is only a fabrication after all, Shiro muttered whilst looking at the party members. However, seeing the group of people she had interacted for the past few days become frozen and helpless, she couldn't help but shake her head. Trial complete. Grade B. Che, grade B? This lady has killed the dragon. Why is it grade B? Shiro muttered. Side quest completion grade B. Main quest completion grade C. Hidden task completion grade A. Hidden task reward Ancient Healing Arts, Fire of Life. Main task B grade reward Calamity Dragon Scale, Calamity's Will, Tier 2. Only 2 items? Are you serious? This miss went through all that for 2 items? Shiro frowned at the cheap reward. Calamity Dragon Scale, Orange, 3/3. A scale that contains the power of the Calamity Dragon. One is able to use this scale 3 times to exhibit the power of the Calamity Dragon for a short amount of time. Limited to Tier 3 due to be rank completion rate. Duration, 10 minutes. Due to certain hidden conditions met, you are rewarded with the Calamity Force. Calamity's Will, Tier 2, Shadow Attunement Augmentation, Orange. Your shadows are now embedded with the power of calamities. Increased mana absorption, poison, and corrosion. Limited to Tier 2. Grants a decent resistance to status effects. Limited to Tier 2. Increase affinity with spirits and corrupted monsters. I stand corrected, Shiro said in surprise when she saw the description. At a glance, the Calamity Dragon Scale seemed like a material that one would use when crafting a weapon or armor. However, what she didn't expect was the fact that the scale was actually a type of essence relic that would house the powers of the monster that dropped it. While the item isn't precious to high-level adventurers, for her, it was a life-saving item. Even though her Nanomancer class will help her take care of level 50s, anything in the C-class territory was still a little out of reach for her. But with this, she wouldn't need to worry about any potential conflicts with the slums. When a person is granted power above their tier, They wouldn't know how to use the power efficiently since they aren't able to output all of the power at their disposal. However, it was no problem for her since her power easily surpassed Tier 3 in her past life. With a single experiment that increased her level way past the 200 mark, she was Tier 5 hero that hardly had a match in the world. Naturally, since the scientists could upgrade her, they could upgrade others. But the other test subjects didn't have the same efficiency with the nanobots, which resulted in them only reaching level 150/Tier 5. Even the best subject could only reach the early stages of level 200 plus. The problem was the fact that there were experiments happening all over the world. There were so many labs hidden in the world to the point that some even guessed that it was impossible to find all of them, even if they spent their whole life searching. So even though they destroyed a lot of labs, they were far from being able to completely eradicate them. And amongst her conflicts with the test subjects, she ascended into the legendary Tier 6, which was never seen in the world. She could remember her upgrade having a visible effect in the world. It was also due to the fact that she had reached Tier 6 before the hero that his jealousy was aroused. Shaking her head of the idle thoughts, Shiro glanced at her level. Name, Shiro. Race, Snow Girl. Evolution criteria yet to be met. Title, Shadow Empress, Intermediate Monster, 10/50th Humans Killed, Fratricide, One Woman Battalion, Creator of the Frozen Hell series, Incomplete. Level, 44. Class, Snow Girl, Snowmancer. HP, 182, 700/182, 700. MP, 439, 635/439, 635. STR, 900-1000, plus 100. VIT, 1200, plus 200. INT, 2700-2800, plus 550. AGI, 1700, plus 450. DEX, 1100-1200, plus 100. DEF, 400, plus 100. Equals title bonus. Unassigned points, 300-0. Attunements. Ice Tier 2. Lightning Tier 2. Metal Tier 2. Shadow Ed Tier 2. Augmented with Calamity's Will. Balance, 163,720,500 US. Equipment, tap to display. Skills. Snow Girl. Tier 2 Ice Magic, Passive Regeneration. Blessed by Ice, Snow Magic, Faded Snow Movement, Cold Aura, Icy Touch, Icy Breath, Ice Field Affinity, Cold Illusion. Snowmancer. Dagger Creation, Nanotech Engineering Tier 2, Sword Creation, Bow Creation, Heavy Weapon Creation, Shield Creation, Armor Creation, Hand Cannon Creation. Frozen Hell Series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hellfire. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Mana Barrier, Lightning Magic, Tier 2. Metal Magic, Tier 2. Shadow Magic, Tier 2. Shared Skills, EAN. Shadow Buff, Tier 1. Ice Chain, Tier 1. Shadow Cloak, Tier 1. Shadow Talon, Tier 1. Rift Walker, Tier 1. Absorption/Redirection, Tier 1. Shadow Affinity, Tier 1. Che. The kills didn't go into my title. Shiro clicked her tongue as she couldn't help but lament the missed opportunity. If it had included all of the humans she had killed, she could almost guarantee that her monster title would increase once more. Suddenly, a bright light filled her vision and stopped her musing short. She shielded her eyes and waited for the light to die down. Asterisk bang. A sudden hammer hit the back of her head as it sent her crashing into the ground. Lyrica looked in shock as her enemy had slammed his hammer into the back of Shiro's head. What in the F asterisk say? Shiro said slowly as she slowly got out of small crater without too much visible damage. Her eyes were slight bloodshot from the anger she was feeling since she had just left her trial and some random F asterisk CK decides to allow the hammer to make sweet love to the back of her head, the result of which caused her to faceplant the ground. Both Lyrica and the person who had just hit Shiro paled when they felt her killing intent burst outwards. Ice spread rapidly as it instantly froze the man's body, excluding his head. Would you like a rundown about what's happening? Lyrica asked as she could tell that Shiro wanted an explanation right now. Go. Make it short or else I'll start peeling this fat bastard behind me like a fucking banana. Shiro typed out on her phone. Her cold eyes sent shivers down the man's back as he could tell that she was being serious. TSK. I need to class up quickly because I swear if I have to type on the phone one more bloody time when I'm angry, I'm going to kill someone. Shiro thought angrily. So basically, ####. After listening to Lyrica's explanation, Shiro could only reluctantly let the man go. He was one of the patrolmen who had seen Lyrica struggling with developing a new skill and volunteered to spar with her. Just as their spar started, Shiro had returned from her trial and the back of his hammer came into contact with her skull. You can go now. The more I see you, the more I want to peel you. All right, he stammered as he quickly walked away. After walking away, he couldn't help but glance back again only to see 4 swords around Shiro that glowed ominously. She made a throat-slitting gesture which caused him to run without looking back. Whilst this was happening, he couldn't help but think back to when he had accidentally hit her. How did she make it out unscathed? He thought to himself as he was a bona fide level 50 hammer master. Even if she was a level 44 tank, she would have taken some visible damage as well. But from what he could see, she was perfectly fine. However, only Shiro knew what had happened. And the truth was that it definitely hurt, but not to the point where she would be visual about the pain. Shiro had her guard down since she had just finished her trial, but she never expected to get hit the moment she got out. Not only that, but a single hit had taken 75k worth of HP off in one hit. That was also the reason as to why she was pissed and wanted to peel the guy like a banana. If it wasn't for her monster title that had effectively doubled her HP, she could have died right there and then. Did it hurt? Lyrica asked. What do you think? I just had a 1,000 pounds hammer slam into the back of my head. It tickled. Shiro rolled her eyes. Lyrica couldn't help but facepalm when she realized how dumb her question was. So how was the trial? Did you get anything good from it? She asked. The rewards were pretty amazing. It'll help me fight against any level 60 that decide to challenge me. Hell, I'm pretty sure that even if they're level 70, I'll be able to fight them on equal ground. Naturally, the item is limited, so it's my life-saving item. Shiro replied. The item must be pretty high ranking then, right? Yep. Orange grade once again. Shiro smiled. PFT. Orange grade again? Lyrica widened her eyes in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Shiro had managed to obtain so many orange grade items in such a short time. Shiro nay. A young voice cried out in excitement as they could see a shadow jump towards Shiro. As for Shiro, she only smiled and opened her arms for Kane. However, Lyrica intercepted the Kane missile and stood in front of Shiro like a guardian. Oh, Rikane, are we playing that game? Kane smiled and increased her running speed. Lyrica responded in kind as she, too, ran towards her. Shiro watched with interest since she wanted to see how they improved while she was inside the trial penetrating a certain calamity dragon. Once they were about to collide with each other, Lyrica reached out and grabbed Kane by the hips before bending her body backwards to suplex her into the ground. However, Kane had a happy smile on her face since they had practiced this a few times whilst Shiro was inside the dungeon. Bending her body backwards, Kane demonstrated flexibility that was almost on par with Shiro, had managed to sliver out of the Lyrica's hold. Since Kane had escaped her grip, Lyrica transitioned her suplex into a handstand and kicked towards Kane. Jumping over the kick, Kane used Lyrica's leg as a jump pad to propel herself towards Shiro. How was that, Shiro-ne? Kane asked with a happy smile whilst hugging Shiro. A lot of improvement. Glad to see that you haven't skimped out on improving your flexibility. Shiro praised whilst rubbing her head. Hee. Lyrica sighed as she watched Kane enjoy a head rub from Shiro. Even though she only patted my head once, she thought sadly. Shiro only raised an eyebrow when she sensed Lyrica's change in emotion. Smiling wearily, Shiro walked over and patted her head. Lyrica was a little taken aback and blushed lightly. However, that didn't stop her from enjoying the head pat. Well, seems like our princess is entertaining her harem the moment she returns. Ha ha ha. Madison laughed slightly as she watched this happen from the tents. Shiro only chuckled slightly in response. Any news for me? Shiro asked. What kind of news? Good or bad? Both. Well, I suppose we'll start with some good news. The city has calmed down a lot. The top families are settled down once again as Alara has woken up from her coma. Now they're having a price war, so the citizens are partying. In addition to this, me and Lyrica are now both level 40. Madison replied. Congratulations. And now the bad? The people from the slums are becoming more and more ballsy. We have had 14 cases of missing people during the time you were gone. Madison frowned in worry. Seems like I'll need to do some hunting tonight or else things will get worse. Shiro thought to herself. I'm going to do some cleanup tonight. Hopefully, it'll distract the slums so we can have some peace and quiet. Shirone, are you doing some cleaning? Kane asked curiously. Your Shirone is going to clean up some trash? Lyrica replied in Shiro's stead. Don't tire yourself out too much. You've just returned after all. Madison chipped in. Both of them already know what Shiro is like, so they know that they can't dissuade her from killing a few trashes that had nothing better to do with their lives. After some cleaning up, we can just have a day out tomorrow. Just the four of us. Plus, I can show you a little something I've picked up in the dungeon. Shiro smiled as she couldn't wait to show them the fire of life. After talking to Madison, Lyrica, and Kene for a little longer, Shiro entered the tent and saw Een weakly laying on her sleeping bag. Upon seeing Shiro enter the tent, Een was instantly filled with life and flapped her wings towards Shiro. Asterisk chirp. Een cried out her injustice whilst pointing at her belly, then to her mouth. I'm sure I left you enough mana stones to survive for a week. How are you hungry? Shiro asked. Een paused for a moment before shaking her head. Suspicion crept up on Shiro's face as she turned to Madison. I'm sure I left Een enough food for a week. How is she hungry? She ate it all on the first day. Madison rolled her eyes. Star. Chirp? Don't act cute. You can starve for tonight. Shiro sighed and put a lollipop in her own mouth. Asterisk chirp. Een reached out with her wings for the lollipop with teary eyes, but Shiro only ignored her. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. Sitting on the tallest building in the slums, Shiro looked down with a pair of cold eyes. Right now, she had created a black metallic hood that would hide her white hair in the moonlight. Pulling up her mask, Shiro stood up and took a deep breath. We'll test these blades tonight, she muttered as her necklace glimmered for a moment and 4 swords hovered around her. Glancing at the swords, she changed them into the shadow element form and augmented it with Calamity's will. The moment she augmented the swords, they started to change a little more as the swords looked a little more demonic. Not only did the guard look like it was made with the spine of a dragon, but the blade itself became pitch black and carved with blood-red runes. The purple color had completely been erased and instead replaced with the ominous red that seemed to flicker with life. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro ignored that and jumped off the roof. Falling head first, she dived towards the 2 people that had just exited one of the buildings belonging to the Jade Sharks, one of the top 3 syndicates in the slums. She was going to cut down on the numbers of all 3 syndicates to get them to behave for now. Hunting time, she muttered as Een poked her head out of the hood. Asterisk KRRR. Ice chains sprang up from the ground as the duo was instantly restrained. Before they could even scream, Shiro flicked her wrist as 2 swords struck down. Asterisk bang. Upon contact, the blood-red runes glowed ominously and started to consume the flesh from the duo's body. Even after cutting the duo in half, the corruption didn't stop until both of them had been completely consumed. Amen. Well, aren't you a scary sword? Shiro muttered in shock. She never expected the potency of a Tier 2 Calamity's will would be so strong. Seems like I'll have to avoid using this augment if I can, since it'll consume the mana stone inside the monsters as well, she thought to herself. However, that was only limited to grunts that could die in 1 critical hit. When pitted against a big boss, the corruption would help her greatly when trying to reduce the boss's health. Flipping her body, she landed on her foot and charged into the building. The people inside were shocked but responded quickly by pulling out their weapons and charged towards Shiro. Lightning and metal twined together in her hands as two hand cannons materialized. Asterisk bang bang. With 2 shots, she had easily killed the duo closest to her while blades orbited around her in order to protect her safety. Whatever struck against the swords would start to corrode. From her estimates, anything that was below a blue rank would be a goner, while blue rank could only resist the corrosion for a short moment. If it was to come into contact with the swords for an extended period of time, they would crumble away. What the hell? Someone shouted out in shock. Not only did a random midget burst into their building and killed 2 people, but she did it with guns as well. To make matters worse, she had 4 swords that destroyed weapons that came into contact with them in a matter of moments. They were about to ship out a new batch of goods, but they didn't expect to be attacked. Asterisk bang bang bang. Flipping over their attacks, Shiro killed 3 more people before controlling one of the swords to attack the final person in the room. Landing on the table, she raised both arms and aimed the gun around her, just to make sure the room was cleared. 8 people. That increases the tally to 18. Only 32 more to go. Shiro thought with narrowed eyes. However, she wasn't about to leave without looking around. Hopping off the desk, she looked around and saw that the room was littered with trash. On the floor was a mix of corpses, blood, money, and playing cards. Furrowing her brows, she decided to look around a little more before leaving since she had more people to kill tonight. She couldn't stop at just one room. However, even after searching for a little longer, she couldn't find anything substantial. Twirling her hand cannon, she aimed it above her and shot once. Asterisk bang. Thud. The shot had killed an assassin that was crawling on the ceiling. She had noticed the assassin entering just now and couldn't help but roll her eyes. Trying to send killing intent at me, expecting me to freeze, is just stupid, she thought to herself. Leaving the room, she crouched down a little and jumped upwards. With a simple flick of her wrist, an ice ramp erected under her feet and helped her reach the roof. Dashing along the roof, Shiro glanced down to the street and saw quite a few people sneaking towards the camping site. Nice. She smiled coldly and jumped towards them. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. Dropping the head onto the ground, Shiro sighed in fatigue and looked around her. If anyone else came into the room right now, they would pause in shock due to the sheer amount of blood splattered everywhere. Now only that, but there was not a single intact corpse. And that's number 100. Huh. Shiro muttered as she had killed 140 people tonight. 40 to upgrade her current title and another 100 into the progress of her next title. Unfortunately, after her 50-point mark, she needed 500 points for the next upgrade. Proficient monster, 100 out of 500 humans killed. Stat points are now worth 220% of their original value. This change had allowed her to increase her HP and MP by a decent margin. Unfortunately, however, she wasn't able to level up. Most of the people she had killed were level 20s to 30s, with the rare few who were in their 40s and a handful at level 50. With this upgrade, her HP had reached 192.5k and her MP reached 460.57k. Cracking her neck and the other bones in her body, Shiro yawned slightly and started to walk towards the camp again. She had a huge hill of loot to sort through, some of which she would gladly throw into a pile and set it on fire. That was due to the fact that at least 20% of the objects she could see were tools used to spice up one's night with their partner, some of which were more extreme than others. If I gave these to Arim, I may be able to clean out my tab, Shiro thought as she still owed her a photo shoot. Shaking her head, Shiro made her way back to the tent so that she could catch some sleep. Even though she could easily go a few days without sleep, it was always better to rest when you can. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. So what is it that you wanted to show us? Madison asked as they had rented a training space in the Adventurers Guild. Lyrica nodded in agreement since she too was a little curious as to what Shiro had obtained in the trial. Before I can show you it, let's have a little spar. I want to see both of you attack me with everything you got. I want to see how far you progressed first. Shiro smiled. You sure? Lyrica asked. Yep. And remember, everything you got. I don't want a 50% effort. I don't want you to almost give everything you got. I want you to come at me like you want to kill me. 120% effort. Looking at the seriousness in her eyes, they knew she wasn't kidding. Furrowing her brows slightly, Lyrica looked at Madison as the two of them nodded at each other. All right. Madison sighed and equipped her weapon. Lyrica was the same and equipped her upgraded dual-ended blades. As for Shiro, she tapped her necklace and summoned her ascendant dream. The four swords floated with a soft chime. Once the three of them were ready, they made eye contact and nodded at each other. Attack Knight, Madison commanded as a dark aura burst out from her and wrapped pitch-black armor over her body. Her weapons shifted into a giant axe since she knew that fighting Shiro defensively would only end in failure. Their best bet would be to face her offensively. Whilst Madison was powering up, Lyrica dashed towards Shiro with her blade twirling beside her. Rose Blossom, Vines, Lyrica said whilst she aimed her spare palm at Shiro. A magic circle with the design of a rose in the center erupted out from underneath Shiro as rose vines shot out and attempted to wrap around Shiro. She only smiled as her swords flicked with lightning. Asterisk boom. As if she were incarnation of a lightning spirit, lightning struck around her like a protective guard and shattered Lyrica's magic circle as a result. URG. Rose Blossom, Bloom, Lyrica shouted out whilst being flung backwards. Seeing the force of the strike, she knew that they had to focus. The pieces of vines that were broken due to Shiro's lightning glowed slightly before morphing into roses that shattered into countless petals. All of the petals sharpened up into blades and shot towards Shiro. Impressive, but not enough. Clutching her hand, a magic circle expanded around the room and turned it into an ice cave. Frozen Hell Series, Azure Soul Fire. Blue fire lit up around her and shot towards the petals. Once it lit up a petal, 5 more fireballs would fly outwards and onto the other petals. In a short moment, she had already frozen all of the petals that Lyrica had conjured up. As for Lyrica, she was currently in awe at the sight of Shiro being surrounded by lightning and fire. Standing calmly inside the chaos, whilst her white hair danced around with each of her movements. Lust? Shiro thought, confused at what she could see in Lyrica's eyes. However, that didn't stop her. With a single flick of her wrist, a blunted ice spear shot towards her whilst her guard was down. Wah! Lyrica cried out in surprise as Madison grabbed the back of her collar and flung her away. Ha! She shouted whilst swinging her axe at the incoming spear. Asterisk bang. The collision sent her sliding backwards and stopped near Lyrica. I know you want nothing more than to rub one out right now, since I have to admit, Shiro's looking goddamn F** cable right now. But remember her age and the fact that we're in a fight, Madison whispered before charging forward. Lyrica shook her head and dashed forwards alongside Madison. Madison's axe started to heat up as magma flowed out of the axe's blade. Volcanic Mountain Cleaver. Grabbing one of the floating swords, Shiro smiled and slashed towards the side of the axe. In-style Phantom Arts, Third Phantom, Counterweight Phantom. Asterisk bang. The force caused Madison to widen her eyes at Shiro's outrageous strength. She had a few spars with the level 50s, so she knew what the strength of level 50 amounted to, and Shiro's strength was not something a mage should have. Plus, it may even surpass some of the level 50 strength-based adventurers she sparred with. Lyrica took this chance to swing her blade towards Shiro in this gap. However, before her blade could even get close enough, it was blocked by 3 blades that flickered with lightning. Their teamwork has improved a little, Shiro thought with a smile. Hashtag. Ha. Ha ha. Both Lyrica and Madison panted heavily as they laid on the floor of the sparring room. The result was as one could guess, a one-sided fight that gave Lyrica and Madison no chance of retaliation. Can we see what you wanted to show us now? Madison asked whilst her chest jiggled to her breathing. Shiro glared at those mountains and wondered if she could reduce their size a little, if she ripped them off and healed her using the fire of life. Even though her own body had grown a little due to her previous upgrade, it was still far from what she wanted. Shiro, I know you hate my tits, but please don't look at them like they're your mortal enemy. Madison said as she felt like she could cough up her lung right now. Amen. I'll show you what I got from the trial now. Asterisk click. Snapping her fingers, green fire lit up on her fingertips. Waving her fingers, the fire flew towards the duo and expanded to cover their entire body. Madison was surprised at the fact that her body was healing at a visible pace. Even her fatigue is somewhat relieved. However, Lyrica's reaction was a little different since she recognized the flame. Shiro, why do you have the essence flame? Shiro, why do you have the essence flame? Lyrica asked as her face was a little pale. Essence flame? This skill is called the Fire of Life, and it's a part of the ancient healing arts. Shiro replied with a slight tilt of her head. It's a different name, but it's the same thing. I just need to let you know that you should never show it to elves. Lyrica said after taking a deep breath. At this point, even Madison was a little intrigued with what Lyrica meant by that. You see, the essence flame is a treasured heirloom of the elves that was lost long ago. When the elves had lost the flame, they were no longer able to provide the nutrients to the great forest. However, that was not the end of their problem. Without the essence flame, they had lost their biggest healing potential. You see, due to the presence of this flame, not many elves had decided to class up into the healer class. Thus it left us defenseless and caused us to lose many battles that we could have won with ease before. Naturally, losing meant surrendering your will. This period of time is classified as the Dark Ages in the elven history. Lyrica sighed. During this time, many elves were lost and others used as pleasure tools. We were on the brink of extinction until the elven sword Saintess came with power unlike any other. With a single wave of her hand, the skies would be filled with swords that purged all that raised their hands against the elves. With her help, the elves were able to regroup and slowly recuperate. Later, the Saintess became the warrior queen of my race and laid down the order that should anyone find the essence flame, no matter what, must bring it to the great forest. And you know the rest. The elves arrived on Earth, and we haven't been able to find the flame ever since. But I thought skills can't be passed on. Plus, my Fire of Life is only limited to Tier 2 right now. Its capabilities doesn't match your description. Shiro furrowed her brows. That's because it is just a spark right now. The elves have a myriad of options to nurture a spark into the essence flame. However, you are right that skills can't be passed on. But a few skills are outside of this rule. The essence flame is one of them. You can imagine it to be a torch of sorts. Once you kill the holder, you become the next holder of the essence flame. Lyrica said as she clenched her hands into a fist. Silence ensued the room as Shiro just realized how dangerous her healing skill was. So you're saying that the moment I expose myself to an elf other than you, I'll be attacked? Shiro typed out after a heavy sigh. Unfortunately, yes. Shiro sat back for a moment as this wasn't good news at all. She would need to be careful of where she shows this fire, or else she'll be hunted down at a moment's notice. While she did have the safety of temporarily entering Tier 3 due to her trial reward, what happens after her 3 uses run out? Well, don't worry about it too much. I just need to be careful of who I expose this fire to, right? Plus, I'm sure everything will be fine. Shiro smiled. Her attempt at trying to lighten the mood seemed to work a little as Lyrica nodded in agreement. As long as she didn't let any other elf see the fire, they'll be fine. Yeah, what am I worried about? Lyrica smiled and stood up. Right then, what shall we do for the rest of today? She asked. Well, let's go to the bathhouse first, Madison said whilst massaging her neck. I agreed. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The next day, Shiro was making her way through the city. Her goal today was to hand the items over to Aram since her inventory was full of it, and it was taking up too much space. Seems like after I killed a bunch of them, the slums have quietened down a little, Shiro muttered since the stairs she used to get had completely disappeared. Naturally, she was still getting a few stares from the crowd, but none from the slums area. Upon arriving at the promised meeting spot, Shiro saw that Aram was being approached by 3 men. They were being rather pushy as Shiro could see Aram's discomfort, which wasn't odd since Aram was a beautiful woman. Ah, you're here. Aram waved as she saw Shiro from the corner of her eyes. The 3 men who were approaching Aram looked over to see who it was. However, when they laid eyes on Shiro, they felt like electricity was coursing through their bodies. No, wait. They were being tasered by Shiro right now. Shiro, who was currently zapping the trio with her right hand, used her left hand to throw a new lollipop into her mouth. Shouldn't you be careful of your output? A few eyes are turned over here, Aram whispered. Not lethal, just shocking. Think of it like a love tap. Shiro shrugged before releasing them. Shaking off the lightning that was still flickering on her right hand, she left the area with Aram. So why did you call me out today? Aram asked after they left the area. I got a few items for you that I hope will serve as payment since we haven't found a moment to do some photo shoots. Ohaya? A few items? Do go on, Aram said as she licked her lips a little. Shiro looked at her with a blank face before looking down back at her phone. We should go to a private room, one that won't allow anyone to spy. Why are you ashamed of having these items? It's perfectly normal for a girl your age to possess these kind of items. Even though you are passing these on to me, it doesn't matter. Aram grinned slightly. PST, by the way, did you use them? Aram asked with a hushed whisper. Huh. Shiro sighed out heavily. No, these are not mine. I managed to obtain them after I killed a bunch of people in the slums 2 days ago. She typed and rolled her eyes. Ah, so it was you who killed the people in the slums. Aram responded in surprise. They know of me? Shiro asked as she narrowed her eyes. If her identity is compromised, she'll need to slaughter everyone so that no harm will befall her. Don't worry. They don't know who did it, but they do know that you are a mage. A powerful one at that. Not to mention, due to the special type of damage at the scene, they decided to codename whoever caused the mass killing. Noxious Warlock, Aram said as she tried to suppress her laugh. When Shio heard what the slums had decided to call her, she couldn't help but feel a little thankful. While the codename wasn't optimal, the fact that they guessed her gender was a plus since they won't think about looking for a female. You seem to like this nickname? Well, it's not bad. They would have less of a chance to find out who I am if they're looking for warlocks. That, and I have a question for you. Shoot. How do you know all of this? Well, I have a few connections to know about what's happening. Aram smiled. Oh. That's only limited to the slums, though. The only thing I know are the common stuff. Nothing more, nothing less. Aram shrugged as she could tell that Shiro wanted to know more. Fine. Shall we go to your tent or something? Mine's not where I would like to show these items. Shiro asked as the presence of Kane at the tent wouldn't allow her to show these items. Sure. ####. All right, now, what do you want to show me? Aram asked as she sat down in her own personal tent. *bang. A pile of toys appeared in Aram's tent with a heavy thud. The sheer quantity of toys even made Aram surprised. This? You got all of this in one night? She asked. Yeah. Well, either you had killed a lot, or the people in the slums were quite spicy with their love life. Aram chuckled before storing everything away in her inventory. I'll take all of this as payment and strike off your tab. Now we're even. Thanks. Shiro typed out as she prepared to stand up. Before you go, I have a proposition for you and your friends. Aram called out just before Shiro left. A proposition? You see, since I don't know when I'll be going back to New York, I've decided to try to procure a few items that I need. However, to get these items, I'll need to enter the Kairosa ruins deep in the ocean. And this is where you and your friends will come in. I need you to help me on my way to the ruins since going in solo isn't exactly the smartest thing. Can't you recruit a few adventurers? I'm sure there are plenty of people. Shiro asked while she sat back down. She was a little curious about the Kairosa ruins, so this offer did hold some temptation for her. Plus, I'm sure that the auction house organizes an excursion to the ruins every now and again, right? You're not wrong. However, with how I look, I'm sure there are a few unsavory individuals who'll make a move. Not only that, but I would struggle to fight off multiple level 50s underwater. Aram waved her hand. True. Especially with your body, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have a feast. Shiro nodded her head. She understood that beautiful women were always a target for people. If they weren't strong, they'll be devoured, both literally and metaphorically. I'll just take that as a compliment, haha. Aram replied, as that wasn't something she had expected a 13-year-old would type. So what are the rewards for us? Shiro asked. How about 45% of all the treasure we managed to excavate from the ruins? Naturally, if all we excavate is the stuff I need, then I'll pay you in other forms when we exit the ocean. 45% of all the treasure isn't too bad of a deal. Shiro thought, as it was a little enticing. However, she wanted to see what other forms of payment Aram was willing to give. What other forms of payment are you suggesting? A few more sets of monster cloth outfits? A few sets for each of your party, Aram offered. Seems like the importance of whatever it is in the ruin is quite big for her to offer a few sets of monster cloth outfit. Shiro thought, since she knew how hard it was to get a set of monster cloth outfit from Aram. Even she had only managed to get one set, and that was what she was wearing. No matter how she asked, Aram had refused to give her another set of monster cloth outfit. That was mostly due to the fact that monster cloth was hard to obtain, and even Aram only had a limited stock of monster cloth. How many sets? One for you and your friend, since you already have one, and two for anyone else. Aram offered, as that was as much as she could offer. You're lucky then. I only have one other party member, and her name is Madison. You've already met Lyrica? Shiro smiled. I take it as you agree? Well, not exactly. I'll need to do some research about the place. My party are only in our level 40s, so we can't challenge anything too above our level. Shiro replied seriously. Even though both Madison and Lyrica had improved, plus the fact that she could use her hand cannons now, she still needed to be careful of what they face. Fighting in the ocean was a lot different to fighting on land, as controlling your body movement was harder. To make matters worse, the monster in the ocean had long adapted to their situation, so they were a lot faster than them if they were to swim. I've already done the research. In the area we are entering, the highest level enemy would be a level 50 boss, and the average would be around 40 to 45. Perfect for your level. But you do realize that we are severely weakened when we fight in the ocean, right? I know, which is why I have already prepared a few countermeasures for this. Aram smiled. When are we going? We'll be leaving city in 2 days, not including today. The time will be 10 p.m. at the northern docks. The trip to the ocean will be around 2 hours long before we enter a submarine to get closer to the ruins before getting out and scuba diving for the rest of the trip. You don't need to bring anything except for yourselves? All right, I'll go and ask my party members about what they think. Shiro nodded before leaving. While she was on her way back, she was thinking about a few ways to convince Lyrica and Madison into coming to the trip. It was only after 30 minutes of thinking that she settled with an excuse that she was satisfied with. However, it was wasted effort since Lyrica and Madison said yes before even hearing the details of the trip. At least let me use my excuses first, URG. Shiro groaned a little since it was extremely hot today. When she had agreed on the time with Aram, she didn't expect there to a heat wave on the same day. Even though she was using ice to help her cool down, it was still annoying to be constantly cooked by the sunlight. Ha ha ha, Shiro, come join us and stop being such a party pooper. Aram laughed as they were currently waiting on the beach. The boat had yet to arrive, and they were a little early, so they decided to have some fun at the beach while they wait. Currently, Aram was wearing a bikini that was colored entirely black with a few frills around the edges. Not only that, she also had a waistcloth that covered a bit of her right thigh. As for Lyrica and Madison, they both wore bikinis as well, but theirs were a little more simple. Lyrica just had a normal white bikini, whilst Madison decided to go with a red bikini. However, to Lyrica's disappointment, all Shiro wore was her white dress that she woke up with and a straw hat to block out the sun. I don't have a bikini. Shiro shrugged as she made up an excuse on the spot. I got a few bikinis for you. Lyrica shouted out as she pulled out 5 sets of bikinis from her inventory. Why does she have 5 bikinis that fit my size? Shiro thought to herself. See? You have a bikini now? Aram chuckled. Well, I guess it's good to burn some time right now. Giving up, Shiro walked over to Lyrica and had a look at the bikinis. Finding one that she felt would suit her, she made her way to the changing rooms. When the group saw her, they couldn't help but drop their jaws in shock. The bikini Shiro chose was a plain black bikini like Aram's. She had a waistcloth that reached her knees as her delicate thighs would occasionally peek out due to her movements. Even Aram couldn't help but stare at her smooth skin that lacked any sort of blemish that would ruin her appearance. As for Lyrica, a trail of blood was slowly dripping out of her nose. Shiro only raised an eyebrow when she saw all of this. "So what are we doing?" she asked. "All right, we were going to do some beach volleyball." Aram snapped out of her daze and pulled out a volleyball. "If I remember, we can only touch the ball once and we aren't allowed to let it hit the ground, right?" "Yep. I'll teach you the rules whilst we play." As they made their way to the nets, they received countless stares from the surrounding people, especially Shiro. Whilst her body figure wasn't devilish like Aram's, her own charm was enough to draw all of the stares. Meanwhile, Lyrica was feeling both glad and annoyed. Glad since she isn't receiving a lot of stares. If she did, she would start blushing due to embarrassment. However, at the same time, she was annoyed due to the fact that they were staring at her precious Shiro. "I see that you don't mind the stares." Aram spoke up as she saw how composed Shiro was. "Just ignore them and you'll be fine." When they arrived at the net, they split into two teams. Lyrica was paired with Shiro, to her absolute delight, while Madison was paired with Aram. Remember, you can only touch the ball once and you have to get it over the net. If the other team lets it hit the floor on their side of the court, you win a point. Aram called out as she reminded Shiro about the rules. Shiro made an okay sign to show that she understood. "Great. Asterisk pa." Aram hit the ball over the net as Shiro dashed towards the ball. However, Lyrica was also dashing towards the ball. But before they could collide, Shiro flipped her body up and avoided Lyrica at the last moment. "Tisk." Lyrica clicked her tongue since she was somewhat hoping for a collision. At least then, she'll be able to use it as an excuse to feel Shiro up a little. Shiro, who was still in the air, looked at the volleyball and punched it with all her strength. Asterisk bang. Her punch had caused the ball to explode due to the excessive amount of force she had applied to the beach ball. "I'll take that as our point then." Aram smiled wearily and took out a second volleyball. Shiro landed on the sand softly and looked at her hand. Maybe I should reduce the amount of force to 10% and slowly increase if the ball can take it." Shiro thought to herself. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. In the end, Shiro managed to average her strength around 45% to get the maximum efficiency out of the ball. After she managed to find the sweet spot, they never lost a point. Shiro was mostly the defender whilst Lyrica was the vanguard. Naturally, Shiro would also attack, but after a certain amount of points, they all agreed that Shiro will be defending since Lyrica had almost nothing to do other than watch Shiro. "I'll go get us a few drinks," Aram said as she wiped off the sweat that had built up. Strangely enough, Shiro didn't sweat at all to their surprise. Sitting back down at their folding chairs, Shiro waited for Aram to return. Naturally, there were a few people that worked up the courage to approach them, but a sliver of killing intent was enough to dissuade them. Ironically, every time she used her killing intent, she would create an ice cube and put it into an empty glass. "I'm back," Aram called out as she returned with a tray of drinks. "The boat should be arriving in 10 minutes. We'll finish the drinks then head over to the docks." She continued whilst handing everyone their drinks. Looking at her drink, Shiro shrugged her shoulders and drank all of it in an instant. "All right, I'll go get changed and wait for you girls." Watching her leave, Aram and the duo blinked before looking at each other. "Well, you saw what she typed. Let's go." Madison spoke up as she drank her drink quickly. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. After everyone had changed back to their usual outfit, they made their way to the docks. "Oh wow, I can see the ship from here," Lyrica said in surprise. "Nope, that's not our ship. Our ship is the smaller one next to it." Aram chuckled lightly. "What? There's only the four of us. It's not like we need anything bigger." Aram shrugged, seeing their stale reactions to the smaller boat. "She's right. We don't need a big ship to begin with." Shiro agreed. "PFT, you know I'm joking, right? Ha ha ha, the big ship is ours." Aram grinned and led them to the ship. Lyrica and Shiro looked at each other with a blank face. Both of them were tricked by a few sentences from Aram. Let's just be patient and keep our mouths shut next time. Lyrica sighed. Shiro nodded her head in agreement. Let me introduce you guys. This is the captain of this ship, Captain Sanders. Aram gestured towards a muscular white man. Hello, my name is Sanders, and I'll be taking you to the ruins today. He smiled. He had scars running down his face and some connecting to his arms. In addition to this, he had a strong jawline along with a face full of brown facial hair. And these are my companions for this trip, Lyrica, Madison, and Shiro. She's mute, so she'll communicate to you with her phone, Aram said whilst gesturing to the group. After some short introductions with the rest of the crew, Shiro sat herself down on the tallest point of the ship and waited for them to set off. Once again, there were a few individuals who tried to talk to her, but she only listened for a short moment. If it wasn't important, she'll ask them to leave. Set sail. Hearing the captain shout, Shiro set her eyes out to the sea. Feeling the wind blow against her hair and the salty smell that naturally came with the ocean, she couldn't help but look up at the clear blue sky. I wonder what kind of loot the ruins will give me, she muttered softly. Asterisk chirp. I have no idea what you just said, and I'm not even going to try guess. Shiro chuckled and patted Yin's head. Asterisk chirp. Yin pouted a little since she couldn't talk and could only chirp. What Shiro didn't know was that after she had reached a certain level, she'll be able to materialize a human body and converse like a normal person. But that will have to wait until they enter the C-class territory. Here, will this make you happier? Shiro asked as she handed Yin a mana stone lollipop. Giving the lollipop a side glance, Yin nodded happily and put it into her mouth. Smiling softly, Shiro stroked Yin's head whilst they waited for the ship to arrive at their destination. After traveling for around 1 hour and 30 minutes, the captain stopped the boat and stepped out of his cabin. All right, we're here, boys. Get the submarine ready, he shouted out. Looking around, Shiro could see that there were quite a lot of people were treasure hunting today. The closest ship to them was only 100 meters away from them. There are at least 20 ships here, Shiro thought before flipping her body off of the roof of the ship and landing next to the captain. Oh my God, Jesus Christ, can't you appear normally? Sanders said as he patted his chest. Shrugging at his response, she walked over to the group since they were preparing to get changed. This here is a special suit that I have managed to procure. Using your mana, you'll be allowed to create small footholds that are made from air, and it will be your main source of transport inside the ocean. Shiro, I'll need you to hold off on using your ice and lightning magic if you can, since they aren't the best elements to use in the water. Especially since you may accidentally cause friendly fire, Aram warned whilst showing them the suit. I'll just use my blades then, Shiro replied as she tapped her necklace. Shining with a soft light, the necklace transformed itself into 4 floating swords. That is fine, though I have to say, you've never told me that you had floating swords. Good to know. Aram nodded her head. As she guided Lyrica and Madison on how to put on their suit, she had asked Shiro to stand by the side for now since her suit was a little different. Since we both know your physique is that of a child's, I had to custom edit one of the suits to match your size. Asterisk Poochie. Shiro couldn't help but feel like a vein had burst after she was reminded that she was essentially in a child's body right now. God, I hope I can get an adult body faster, Shiro thought to herself in annoyance. Looking at the suit in Aram's hands, Shiro could see that it was rather well made. The suit itself was an airtight underwater suit that was colored black and red. There was an utility belt on the waist along with a few devices connected around the arms and legs. These devices here will filter out the oxygen for you when you're in the water. These will be the ones that makes the platforms, and this one is to help you reach the surface by surrounding you with a bubble of air. Remember, all of these cost mana to operate, so you'll need to manage your mana a little better, okay? Understood. Shiro nodded and took the suit. Once Aram had made sure that the 3 of them knew how to put on their suit along with their functions, she took them to the changing rooms. Lyrica took a lot longer to change since the suit had highlighted Shiro's body proportions in its entirety. After they got changed, they walked back up to the deck and saw that the submarine was already prepared. We'll wait for you up here while you go search the ruins. Just remember, You only have a 3-hour slot to try find anything you want before you are needed to come back up. If you are late, we'll wait at most 30 minutes before leaving, okay? Sanders warned since death in the ruins weren't uncommon. Just general fights between adventurers could amount to 60% of the casualties, while the other 40% was death just to traps and monsters. Aya, don't worry. We know. Aram grinned as she had a specialized watch to help notify them of when they should head back up to the surface. Looking at the rather impressive submarine, Shiro couldn't help but feel a little excited, since this will be her first underwater ruin exploration. Even in her past life, she only ever went to normal ruins. Let's go. Aram smiled and activated the submarine. Asterisk clack clack. The claws that held onto the submarine unlocked, causing them to plunge into the ocean. The lights of the submarine turned on as bright lights pierced the dark oceans. Let's go. Aram smiled as they descended into the deep below. We're approaching our drop-off point. Aram called out as she controlled the submarine. Shiro nodded her head in understanding whilst looking out of the window. She could see that there were 2 other submarines that were approaching the same area. Seems like we've got company, huh? Lyrica said with a slight frown. Indeed. Hopefully we won't have to fight them for the treasure. Madison chipped in. Don't worry about that. There's an unspoken rule between adventurers that no one is to fight before we enter the ruins. When we do, and we have eyes on the same treasure, only then will we fight. Aram called out. What if they see our appearances, though? Lyrica muttered. The 4 of them looked at each other as realization dawned on them. OF*CK. Aram couldn't help but curse a little. Don't worry. I can handle them if things get rough. Since she had the dragon scales, she had 3 lives essentially. Even though this was probably not the best place to use the scales, it was still an option. But we should try to either sneak in ahead of them or after them. Lyrica responded. Hey, what did Shiro write? I can't read it from here. Aram asked as she was curious. Shiro just said that she can handle them if things get a little rough. Madchen replied. Is that so? After waiting for a little longer, Shiro could feel the submarine come to a stop. We're here, Aram said while standing up. Stretching her body slightly, she led them to the exit hatch. On our suits, we all have a tracker that shows us where the submarine is. When we enter the water, I want you to take a moment for your body to get used to the pressure, okay? Seeing that everyone understood, Aram smiled before entering the hatch. Asterisk thunk. Aram was sent shooting out of the bottom of the submarine, surprising the group. Looking at each other for a moment, they shrugged before following behind her. Asterisk thunk, thunk, thunk. A crushing pressure assaulted their bodies as Lyrica and Madison tensed up from the pressure. Shiro, on the other hand, only closed her eyes for a moment. It only took a short while before her body adapted to the pressure. Thankfully, I left Ian back at the ship. Otherwise, it would have been such a pain. Shiro thought to herself in relief. Moving her body around for a moment to familiarize herself with the underwater environment, Shiro swam towards Lyrica and Madison with astonishing speed. Shiro, I've just noticed something. How are we going to communicate? Lyrica asked over the mic as she saw Shiro swim over. Shiro blinked her eyes for a moment as she realized that it was indeed a problem. Why don't we stick with gestures for now? Madison suggested. She had mostly regained her movement since her physique was a little stronger than average due to the fact that she was a tanker. So just the gestures for, follow me, yes and no, right? Yeah. Shiro nodded her head in agreement. She didn't have any objections to following orders since it would be too petty if she wanted to be a leader all the time. Letting someone else take the lead wasn't too bad of an idea, especially since she had the capabilities to follow every order and even help make up for someone else's mistakes. Waiting patiently for everyone to get used to the pressure, Shiro glanced around to make sure that they were safe. A few people had some intention to come over, but Shiro would send out her killing intent to scare them off. However, there was only a slight problem with that. When she used her killing intent, she would be frozen into an ice cube since her passive decreased her body temperature to a dangerous level. Even though she looked quite comedic as an ice cube, her killing intent did its job at scaring away the adventurers that were planning to swim towards them. Once everyone had gotten used to the pressure, they swam towards each other. All right, from now on, I want you to follow me closely since I'll be bringing you to the ruins, Aram said over the mic. Swimming down, Aram led the group towards the ruins. Slowly, the faint shape of a broken-down building could be seen in the distance. Seaweed and other overgrown foliage on the side of the stone pillars and walls. We're approaching the outside walls. For this particular ruin, there are a total of 8 entrances. We'll be going to the entrance closest to the bottom. Aram spoke with a serious tone in her voice. The closer they got to the ruins, the more dangers were present. Therefore, they had to make sure that their guard was constantly up. Shiro knew this fact well as she had been on the lookout since the moment they exited the submarine. Thankfully, there had only been a few monsters that swam near their location but were scared off by Shiro's presence. She didn't know why, but could only guess that they had an innate sense of danger towards other monsters. Perhaps they're intelligent, so they didn't attack us, Shiro thought to herself. Naturally, if they were stronger, they would have attacked Shiro without a second thought. As they approached the ruins, Aram was a little suspicious about the lack of monsters that were supposed to attack them but eventually dismissed it as luck. Gesturing with her hand, she led them towards the entrance. The sheer size of the entrance was rather overwhelming. Not even Shiro's whole body could match up to a single brick that was used to construct the ruin. The light in their vision slowly faded the further they swam. Nodding her head, Aram activated the spotlight that was connected on her shoulder. Wow! Lyrica couldn't help but mutter. With some light that allowed them to see clearer, they were able to depict the engravings on the walls. Large-scale battle art were finely carved into the bricks. Different monsters from myths and legends could be seen along with what seemed to be human warriors with a powerful aura around their bodies. Did you know that theorists guess that the battle carved into these walls are actual events that may have happened in another world? The world where these ruins came from. Remember, don't touch anything and follow me, Aram reminded as they were approaching the danger zone. Sensing the slight amounts of nervousness in Aram's voice, Shiro knew that things were about to get rough. And as she guessed, danger arrived not too long after. The bricks suddenly flipped over to reveal row after rows of crossbows. Light gathered at the strings which slowly shaped itself into an arrow. Aram quickly flicked her wrist and erected several layers of stone walls between them and the crossbows. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Hearing the loud collisions between the arrows and the stone wall, the party knew that they should move quickly. Injecting mana into their suits, a torrent of air ejected out of the soles of their feet and propelled them forward. I'll protect us from the arrows while we make our way to the first treasure room, Aram called out, encouraging the party to speed up. Soon, a forked path could be seen in front of them. Left. Once they turned left, they could see a bunch of sharks charging towards them. Shiro swam a little faster and tapped her necklace. A burst of light blinded the sharks, which caused them to thrash around in shock. Asterisk KSH, KSH, KSH. 3 of her swords slashed through the sharks, causing blood to drift through the water. Gosh, I wish I had passed the test now. Lyrica pouted a little after seeing the swords in action. Shiro only smiled whilst pressing forward. With 1 sword as defense and 3 swords for attack, she was able to clear a path with ease. AI, what a waste of seafood, Madison sighed as she couldn't help but look at the badly cut fish meat that could have been roasted. Maddie, you sound like an Ani right now, ha ha ha. One of those that bargains for everything at the markets. Lyrica laughed a little at her comment. TSK, but you have to admit that it's a little wasteful. We can cook those and get some temporary stats, you know? Madison rolled her eyes. She's right, you know. Aram chuckled whilst defending them from another wave of arrows. As for Shiro, she only glanced back a little before returning her focus on killing sharks that approached them. Soon, a giant set of doors could be seen. The door reminded Shiro of the doors to a mutated dungeon. The carvings of the door would shift occasionally, signifying the death of a monster or human. Seems like one of the earlier parties are still stuck inside. Let's take this moment to go to the next room while they fight, Aram suggested since they were strangers. Down here, if you extended a helping hand, they were sure to drag you down to hell in order for them to survive. There was a unanimous agreement between them since they knew the risks as well. Pushing open the heavy set of doors, they could see the party of adventurers fighting against a giant squid boss. However, the boss wasn't alone. A band of electric eels was swimming around the party. Lightning would spark off their bodies occasionally and would either zap another eel or an adventurer. The adventurer, who had been zapped, would be paralyzed for a short moment. If they were unlucky, the boss would target and kill them. Seeing Shiro's party enter the room, hope filled their eyes as they quickly waved towards them in hopes of getting their help. However, Shiro kept a cold face on and dragged Lyrica and Madison along with her. She knew that if they stayed for too long, the duo may grow pity for the adventurers. The party of adventurers panicked when they saw Shiro's group ignore them and press onwards. Glaring at the girls, they looked at each other before nodding. Shiro frowned when she felt a burst of evil intent from the group. So they want to drag us down with them now that they know we won't help, Shiro thought coldly. Shiro made a signal towards Aram, who could somewhat guess what she wanted to do. You want me to take the two of them onwards? Aram asked just to make sure. Seeing Shiro nod, Aram took Lyrica and Madison out of Shiro's hands and swam forward towards the next room. With her hands free, Shiro gathered mana in both her arms. Frozen Hell, Frozen Slumber. 6 neon blue magic circles expanded around the room with the adventurers in the middle of the circles. Seeing that Shiro was using one of her strongest moves, Lyrica and Madison paled slightly since it may affect them due to the water. Quick, get out of here. Shiro's using her Frozen Slumber skill. The entire place will be frozen, Madison called out hastily. Aram nodded seriously before letting go of the duo. Since they knew of the danger, she wouldn't need to drag them herself. Glancing back, Shiro smiled when she saw the party swim away. Freeze. Shiro muttered coldly before moving her hands towards each other. *KRRR. Ice chains shot out of the circles as ice spread out from wherever it touched. The adventurers paled when they saw Shiro use ice magic. While the chains wrapped around the boss to stop it from moving, a cage of ice was being formed around the area. Some of the adventurers attempted to break the ice walls with spells and attacks, but it didn't work. For those who had used physical forces, their bodies were being frozen at a visible pace. This should do, Shiro muttered with a small smile after she saw that the area was frozen past 50%. Stopping the spell, she swam towards the rest of the group whilst waiting for her MP to regenerate. You didn't freeze them all? Aram asked. Shiro only shook her head. The reason to why she didn't kill was due to the fact that the MP expenditure would be way for huge for her comfort. She needed to save some MP in case they needed to fight a boss later on. Well, let's forget about that for now. In the next room, everyone will need to solo a mini-boss that's scaled to their level before we can head into the first treasure room. Aram shook her head and started to swim past the next set of doors. Once they reached the next room, a magic circle appeared under their body. Don't worry, it's only a teleport circle. Once you've passed, you'll be teleported back here, Aram called out before her body was teleported. Shiro quickly grabbed a life-saving tool out of her inventory before gesturing at it. Lyrica and Madison nodded their heads since they knew what Shiro was trying to convey. Don't worry, Shiro, we know. Lyrica smiled before being teleported. The same went with Madison. As for Shiro, she soon found herself in front of a giant statue of sorts. The statue was in the shape of a humanoid shark that wielded a trident. Muscular limbs and gills could be seen on the statue's body. *crack. A crack split across the body of the statue as Shiro noticed a few small movements. Tapping her necklace once more, Shiro grinned as 4 swords appeared around her and pointed towards the statue. Slashing the 4 swords against the rock-solid body of the monster, Shiro frowned when she realized that the swords were slightly weakened right now and couldn't do as much damage as it should. Elemental Shift. Metal. Shifting the element of the sword to metal for increased sharpness, attack, and the added bonus of ignore defense. Glowing with a silver aura, the swords radiated the feeling of danger even for Shiro. Go! She commanded coldly as she flicked her hand towards the boss. 2 of the swords joined together at the pommel and started to rotate in a clockwise motion. *BZZZ. Cutting through the boss's arm like a saw, The two swords created an opening for her to attack. Shiro narrowed her eyes before swimming towards the arm. Since the arm was only recently destroyed, that means the structural integrity of the boss's body around that area would be a lot weaker. Style Phantom Arts, 3rd Phantom plus 4th Phantom. Combining the two phantoms, one of which allowed her to shift all of the momentum into a certain area and another that ignored defenses to attack the internals, Shiro grabbed the two spare swords and twisted her body in order to maximize the amount of momentum she could output. Bang bang. The collision of the swords with the boss pushed Shiro back as she had to wave her arms and legs around to quickly stabilize herself. However, the boss didn't allow that luxury. The trident, which the boss wielded in his spare hand, stabbed towards her without mercy. KRRR. With a single burst of killing intent, Shiro not only caused the boss to pause for a slight moment, but also froze the water around her. The trident would have pierced her body if not for the fact that she had ice helping her out. Isn't this boss a little too difficult for a level 44? If it wasn't for the fact that I had my monster title, I might have been done for. Shiro thought with a frown. Thawing the ice, she quickly swam away from the area and started to circle around the boss. Since there is no one else but me and you, I'm free to do whatever I want. Shiro muttered with a cold glare. Frozen hell, frozen slumber. Once again, Shiro gathered mana into her palms, creating 6 huge magic circles to surround the boss. Freeze. Oddly enough, she was able to clasp her hands without much trouble, the result of which caused the boss to freeze into a giant ice cube before shattering apart. A with circumflex newbie epsilon s. Upon defeating the boss, Shiro saw a magic circle expand out beneath her, the same one that had teleported here in the first place. She allowed herself to be teleported as bright lights overwhelmed her vision. Learning from her previous mistake of letting her guard down after leaving the trial, which resulted in a hammer being slammed against her head, Shiro grabbed 2 swords to protect herself. Seems like I'm the first one, she muttered once she saw that no one else had returned yet. Click. Returning her swords into their necklace form, Shiro froze herself into an ice cube in order to activate her passive, Ice Field Affinity. Might as well regenerate some MP while I wait for the others, she thought to herself. However, not too long after, she saw Aram appear back in her spot. Seems like I was a little slower than Y. And you're an ice cube? Aram couldn't help but mutter when she saw Shiro in a fetal position inside an ice cube. Shiro only shrugged her shoulders slightly since her MP was still being regenerated. While it was great that she had 460k worth of MP, it was also a downside. Her regeneration simply couldn't keep up. With factors such as her broken links which use more MP per spell along with her monster title that increases her MP exponentially, her regeneration that's only tailored to the average MP usage couldn't keep up. But I have to say, you are quite powerful when compared to the average ice mage. Aram smiled slightly as she swam next to Shiro. I've seen a lot of people in my life that started out in New York, and I have to say, you are by far one of the strongest. Not only in magical power, but also combat experience. Really makes one wonder where you popped out from. She continued, which caused Shiro to narrow her eyes. And to make matters more unbelievable, you do all of this with a set of damage mana links, am I right? Hell, I don't even think damaged could be used to describe them. How about broken? Aram asked, making eye contact with Shiro. Shiro could feel her heart pound a little, but kept a firm gaze. Even if Aram knew about her broken links, if it went down to it, she would take measures to keep her secret safe. AI, don't look at me that way. Ha ha ha. I'm just rather curious about how you could be this powerful even with a set of broken links. Aram chuckled before break eye contact. The only reason as to why I know it's not damaged and instead broken is because my links had been damaged previously. My mana fluctuation back then, when compared to your current fluctuation, were like a stable bridge. Every time you use any type of spell, especially your strongest spells, I can feel the turbulence underneath all of that. If I didn't see you use that large-scale magic earlier when we met up with one of the other parties, I would have never figured out that you had such a condition to your body. She can sense the minute turbulence in one's mana? Shiro thought in shock. There were few classes that had this capability, and each of them was hard to level up. However, there was only one that required a person to have this kind of mastery over mana at such an early stage. She's aiming to class up into a source mage. Shiro thought in surprise. Source mages could class up into a mage saintess. They were by far one of the strongest mage classes one could get. And while she didn't know about the class up requirements, she remembers her old party members in the hero's party telling her about how difficult it was to become a mage saintess. Honestly, I should have noticed earlier. Arim shook her head. From what I've gathered, you've probably bought the rights to the mana springs to try fixing your broken links, right? Seeing your expression, I'm guessing I'm correct. Now then, I have some good news and bad news. Good news is that you're correct in using the mana springs first. If you had used some medicine before the springs, it would have only caused you to permanently fix your links in a messed up state. Links would be connected to the wrong paths and eventually blow itself up. By going to the springs, it should have reorganized your links. This will allow the recovery of the links to be smoother. As to why I know, well, it's because I've attended a guest lecture from one of the professors that came from the largest cities. He specializes in research on the body conditions of mages, and he had researched about broken links back then. I took the class since my links were damaged back then, and he managed to help me fix them. Arim smiled. Now here is the bad news. For you to fix something like the broken links, you would need a full body refresh. I've heard that in the front lines, there is a type of medicine called Phoenix Rebirth pills. Each one is expensive, but they would break down and reconstruct your body slowly. The cheapest pill is only a 1% rebirth. Even the 1% rebirth pill is hard to buy due to how expensive they are and the rarity of the materials used to make the pill. Trying to save up for buying a single pill could take years of constant dungeon exploration. Arim sighed slightly. And to make things worse, you'll need a 100% body rebirth for your links to be completely healed. I don't think you can fix your links for the rest of your life, she said with some pity in her eyes. So she was just worried. Shiro thought as she realized why Arim was pointing this out to her. Smiling slightly, she shook her head since Nantion was already getting her the 2% rebirth pill. Even though it was just 2%, it should be just enough for her to push her attunement into Tier 3, which is a guaranteed requirement to enter the next class. Though there would certainly be side effects to pushing her attunements up like that, 2% was just a leeway for her to give it a final forceful push before her body gives in. Even if she does enter Tier 3, she'll be weakened for a while. Seems like you have a plan, Arim asked with a raised eyebrow. Seeing Shiro nod, Arim sighed in relief. She was a little worried since it would have been a shame for someone like Shiro to have her potential wasted due to mana links. Well, since you have your own plan, just call for me if you need any help, because I had damaged links before. I know about the pain. Arim offered. Also, don't worry about your little friends knowing about your broken links. I've set the channel to private right now, so they won't hear anything. After a few more moments of Arim essentially talking to herself, they saw two magic circles flash as both Lyrica and Madison appeared. Gah, that was such an annoying boss fight. Lyrica complained as she didn't have the same kind of maneuverability in the water. Therefore, she couldn't output her full power. She had to even use a few of her life-saving tools that Shiro gave her. Naturally, she saved her Elven Saint Blessing for last, since it had a 5-day cooldown. I was kinda okay with the boss. It was just annoying that it kept moving around. We were basically playing chase. Madison said since she was able to use her attack knight to deal large amounts of damage. Since we've all passed the test, let's get our loot. Arim smiled. Leading the party through another set of open doors, they saw an opening in the ground. Down here. We'll swim down for a little bit before we enter a no-water area. Be careful and don't land face first. It's there where we'll have the choice between 2 items each and we have to pick one, she called out whilst diving down. After swimming down for a little while, they arrived at the no-water zone as Arim had explained. Quickly flipping her body before they entered the zone, Shiro managed to land on her feet without any problem. She took off her helmet and loosened her hair since it was quite stuffy for her to keep the helmet on at all times. There should be a window in the corner of your peripherals. Click that and the choice for rewards should appear in front of you. Arim said as she was currently pushing the empty space in front of her, presumably operating the system. Following her instructions, Shiro tapped the flashing icon as two items appeared in front of her. One's a blue-ranked dagger, and the other is an item called Ocean Heart Scale. I doubt Aram wants the dagger, so Ocean Heart Scale it is. Shiro thought to herself before selecting the Ocean Heart Scale. Checking her inventory, she saw a giant scale that switched between neon blue and royal blue. I presume you wanted the Ocean Heart Scale? Shiro typed out. Due to the fact that they were in the no-water zone, she could use her phone without problem. Not quite, but it is still helpful. Aram replied. That was all Shiro needed to hear as she took out the scale and threw it to Aram. Thanks. Lyrica and Madison had the same items since the other option weren't as enticing. Expressing her thanks for the three materials, Aram stored them away in her inventory. However, before she could even lead them into the next area, they heard several splashes and a new party of adventurers landed behind them. Whoa, boss, take a look at these chicks. A person shouted out, drawing the attention of the boss of the party. Shiro only gave the party a cold glance before looking away. All of them were level 50 and easy prey for her. She can take care of them in a few minutes if she so wished. However, the same couldn't be said for Lyrica and Madison. Seeing their levels, they paled slightly before covering their bodies a little. Frowning slightly at their blatant stares, the duo made eye contact with Aram and Shiro before nodding slightly. It seems like you guys are a little busy with loot collection. Our party of 4 will head off first. Aram smiled as she distracted the party whilst Shiro gathered mana into her palms. A small magic circle appeared out of sight. Ha ha ha, it's fine. We can go together, the boss said as he tried to seem friendly. However, all of them knew that he was akin to a wolf in sheep's clothing. No, it's fine. Let's go, girls. Aram called out with no intention of playing around with him. Watching the girls walk away, the boss frowned before walking towards them. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Several ice pillars slammed down in front of him with power that would seriously injure him. Looking at Shiro, who was glaring at him coldly, he couldn't help but feel fear for the amount of killing intent that was radiating off of her body right now. Humph! Shiro scoffed before turning around and walking away. They had one warning shot before she went all out to kill them. If they didn't take her warning shot seriously, she would gladly show them the repercussions. We'll be diving down to fight a boss together this time, Aram said serious as they looked at the sinkhole leading back into the ocean. Glancing at each other briefly, they nodded before putting on their helmets on once more and dived downwards. Asterisk splash. Taking a moment to adjust her eyesight, Shiro looked around to see if there were any other paths. Seems like it's just a straight path to the boss, Shiro thought. Following behind Aram, they swam for around 10 minutes through a series of twists and turns. Naturally, they would take the occasional break since their stamina wasn't unlimited. Soon, they could see light peek out from the corner. Gesturing at each other, they pulled out their weapons. Shiro with her Ascendant Dream, Madison with her sword and shield, Lyrica with the dual-ended blades, and Aram was weaponless since she only uses magic. The strategy for this boss is simple. Just hit it till it dies and avoid any attacks if you can. Also, stay away from each other since his attacks chain up to other people close to you. The more it chains, the more damage it deals. If that's clear, give me a nod and we'll enter the room. Waiting for a moment for their responses, Aram swam forward into the room. Asterisk Yura. As if waking up a century-old monster, they could see the entire ruin rumble with random pieces of debris falling past them. Spreading out as Aram had instructed, the party glanced at the monster. Measuring at a minimum of 15 meters long, the monster was a hybrid of different parts from animals. Giant tusks from an elephant, a face of a shark, the elongated neck and body of a serpent, for wing-like flaps that resembled the wings of a manta ray and a shark tail that was filled with spikes. Its body was colored with different shades of teal, along with moss growing all over its body. Grydred the Ancient Behemoth, LVL 45, weakened, HP 1, 000, 000 / MP 1, 000, 000 / Grydrid, the ancient behemoth, has 3 forms of physical attacks and several magic attacks. Watch out for his head, wings, and tail, as well as the turbulence that is caused when he swims past you. If you can't dodge, don't worry, I'll keep you covered with an earth wall. But after that, it'll be down to you to get out of the way before it collapses. Aram called out over the mic. All right, so we just hit it as much as we can, right? Lyrica asked, just in case she forgot any strategies needed for this boss. It's just a huge target that fights back a little. As long as you have sufficient distance from each other, it'll be fine. Aram reassured. Shiro, on the other hand, took the initiative to gain aggro since the others aren't able to swim as fast as her, which meant that they couldn't take aggro as well as her. Elemental shift. Metal. Flicking her wrist, she controlled the blades to slash towards the eyes of the behemoth. Since the behemoth only had 2 eyes, if she took care of one and not the other, she should be able to create some more blind spots for the party to exploit. Asterisk bang. The sword slammed against the boss's eye but failed to penetrate. Huh. Shiro widened her eyes in surprise. The defense of the boss was so outrageous that she didn't even deal 4-digit damage to him. What she did accomplish, however, was gain his aggro. Asterisk Yura. Trashing his head towards her direction, the boss's eyes glowed with a slight blue. Ice suddenly formed around his head and slowly froze the water surrounding it. Eventually, it had formed a hammer of sorts that smashed towards Shiro. The sheer size of the hammer made it hard for her to dodge, so she could only gather mana around her and use ice to fight against ice. Asterisk KRRR. Releasing her killing intent in a huge burst, ice rapidly formed around her before colliding with the hammer. Asterisk bang. The collision caused cracks to form through the ice. Kura. Shiro couldn't help but cough up a little bit of blood due to the impact. Not wasting this moment, the rest of the party attacked the boss. Aram floated for a moment as a giant 3-fold magic circle started to expand out behind her. Drawing runes into the space in front of her, Aram continued to enhance her spell. Tier 3 Earth spell, Gaia's Embrace. She called out the name of the spell in order to increase its effectiveness. Asterisk dong. The toll of a bell rang out, causing a giant 3-fold magic circle, identical to the one behind Aram, to expand out under the behemoth. Asterisk bang bang. Suddenly, 2 giant arms made from earth erupted out of the magic circle and wrapped around the behemoth. Asterisk crack. The breaking of the bones could be heard, which even caused Shiro to flinch slightly. Looking at the caved-in back of the behemoth, she couldn't help but gulp. She should have more spells of this kind. Shiro thought to herself, since a source mage needed mastery over all basic elements, and once she did, she'll be able to amplify the tier of a low-rank spell. With Aram's capabilities, she was able to amplify the effects of a Tier 2 Gaia's Embrace into the realms of Tier 3. Briefly glancing at the boss's health, Shiro couldn't help but gawk slightly at the fact that her spell had managed to deal 6-digit damage. My other spells are somewhat restricted right now, so don't expect me to use them. I can only use my earth magic for now, Aram called out. However, they couldn't celebrate just yet since the bones of the boss could be seen shifting around. Seems like we can't incapacitate it for long, Shiro thought with narrowed eyes. A few bosses would have the passive to heal any injuries that would incapacitate it, such as a broken spine. It was so that they could still fight at peak performance whilst losing health. Quickly thawing the ice around her, Shiro swam toward the back of the behemoth. Since the obvious weak points, such as the eyes, are shielded, the rest of the body should be a little weaker in comparison. I'll save the ass for later, or else the aggro I attract may be a little too much for me to handle right now. Controlling the blades to slash against its hide, Shiro smiled when she saw her blades draw blood. Seems like my guess is right, she thought with relief. Glancing at her damage, she nodded her head slightly when she saw her attack do almost 5-digit damage. While it wasn't optimal, it was at least better than doing damage in the hundreds against a boss that has 1 million health. Meanwhile, Lyrica and Madison was struggling a little since both of their main elements were fire. And using fire underwater wasn't the most effective options. Not only did it deal minimal damage, the MP cost also increased exponentially. HAAA. Lyrica couldn't help but shout out. Her dual-ended blades slammed against the tough hide of the boss and barely did 4-digit damage. Madison was a little better since her class was strength-based, but it wasn't any better. While Shiro, Lyrica, and Madison dealt damage to the boss, Aram supported them from the back with spells that protected them from damage. After a while of attacking the boss, the party noticed a small change. "Get ready, the boss is preparing the next skill," Aram warned. Giving a simple gesture of understanding, the party continued their attack whilst keeping an eye out for the skill. Yura. Bzzz. Lightning flashed around the boss's body, surprising the party a little. "Move back," Aram shouted out. While she did know about the boss's skill set, she didn't know the order of which it would use the skills, especially since it was random all the time. Thankfully, the party reacted quickly and moved back before the lightning could damage them. Stay away from the boss and only use long-ranged attacks. Be wary since it will use a lightning breath attack. Aram frowned. Their luck was pretty bad since the boss had chosen to use lightning early on. Use your mana to form a protective shield around you. Don't forget, your suit is able to help amplify the barrier if you have a mana barrier skill. Aram reminded as a translucent barrier of energy slowly wrapped around her. The same happened with the trio as the lightning attempted to hit them but was warded off by the barriers. Naturally, they still suffered a little bit of damage, but that was much better than being tasered to death. Shiro was a little better since she had lightning attunement. Right now it was at tier 2, which is more than enough to grant her enough protection against the weakened boss that fell into D class for strength. Swimming towards the boss, she would occasionally activate life fire under her suit secretly to heal herself. Her damager per second was definitely the highest out of the party since Aram was focused on covering for Lyrica and Madison. The fight was an arduous task of trying to not get hit while making sure they could actually deal enough damage to the boss. The worst part was that after the 50% mark, the boss started to regenerate his health, which only slowed things down further. But pushing past all of that, they were able to knock the boss down to 15% health. Shiro had kept her MP above 40% at all times since she could feel the occasional stares of the party that they had ran into before. While she didn't know why they were just watching, she could guess that it was either for them to hurt the boss until it was almost dead or to take advantage of them. Whatever it was, Shiro had a plan to turn the situation back in their favor. As expected, once the boss reached 10% health, the party swam towards them from all directions. Even though they couldn't hear each other talk, they could see the gloating in their eyes. "What should we do?" Lyrica asked with a frown on her face. Her first thought was to kill them, but then remembered that they were level 50. "Get out of here first," Aram said as she started to swim away. The other party didn't pursue since they were focused on the boss. Lyrica and Madison followed after Aram, but Shiro stayed back. "Shiro?" Shaking her head, Shiro gestured for them to leave first. Swimming behind the boss, she activated Shadow Cloak to hide herself from the boss. Losing his target, the behemoth set his eyes on the new party. Yura. Little did they know, Shiro hid behind one of the boss's fins and had started to heal it with life fire. Watching the health bar increase, Shiro frowned for a second before giving up. Her initial plan was for the boss to get his health back to full, but it seems like she'll have to go with plan B. Waving her hand, a magic circle appeared behind the boss and aimed towards the most reliable weak point she knew for gaining aggro. Bang. The sudden appearance of an ice spear shocked everyone, including the boss due to the fact that he was on the receiving end. Seeing the damage that was less than 3 digits, Shiro smiled before swimming away with Shadow Cloak activated. As long as she dealt minimal damage, it would mean her aggro would be max since they would realize that someone had just tried to probe it. The scales on the behemoth trembled before slowly turning red. Enraged Grydrid, the Ancient Nightmare, LVL 45, weakened, Essence Unleashed, HP 3,000,000/, MP 3,000,000/. Glaring at the party with his blood-red eyes, Grydrid flapped his wings once, causing several whirlpools to appear around the area. Gah! What the hell happened to the boss? Someone shouted out as the boss, who was almost dead, regenerated all his health and MP and even tripled it. I don't know, but stay away from those whirlpools and retreat. The captain shouted out with slight amounts of panic. He guessed that the ice spear was the result of the white-haired beauty that he had seen before. Shiro, who was the perpetrator of all of this, had long retreated next to the group. They were hidden in the corner far away from the boss. Since they hadn't killed it, they couldn't advance into the next area. I never imagined that you would trigger something that had never been recorded in the guide. There were records where Grydred would get enraged, but never had there been records where his title would change along with stats. Not only did he become the ancient nightmare, his HP and MP tripled. What did you do? Aram asked with curiosity. She wondered about what Shiro could have done, but nothing came up. Since the three of them were swimming away, they didn't manage to see what she had done. Must have stabbed it in the ass. Both Lyrica and Madison said at the same time. Their expressions weary since they had gone through this feeling several times now. They watched as the enraged Grydred attacked the other party. Since they didn't know what Essence Unleashed meant, they decided to hide for now and see how it is. If the situation wasn't good even after Grydred killed the other party, then they'll leave as fast as they can. However, Shiro knew about the status called Essence Unleashed. Grydred is definitely a strong monster. Since it has the capability to use Essence Unleashed, that means his previous level should be at least 200. Shiro thought with a frown. Essence Unleashed was a skill that is learnt when someone reaches level 200. The skill Essence Unleashed would activate all the potential within the user's body in one burst. Naturally, the result of which is severe weakness that can't be healed without at least 6 months of rest. This was always a last-minute trump card that a person wouldn't use unless they knew they were going to die. Of course, it also meant the damage caused to the surroundings are magnified by several folds. Asterisk bang bang bang. Even a random gesture from Grydred was lethal, never mind a full-on hit. The group had to relocate several times in order to keep themselves safe. Soon, they noticed the boss's movements slowing down a little. Seems like Grydred is running out of juice, Aram said whilst peeking at the battle. The casualties of a single use of Essence Unleashed had erased more than 80% of the other party, leaving only the captain and a few other members. Shall we wait until it completely runs out of juice then? Lyrica asked. Yup. Even if there are some members left from the other party, if they're smart, they won't pick a fight with us. Aram smiled. But Shiro had other thoughts. After Essence Unleashed ends, the user will be severely weakened. At that point, killing Grydred will be a piece of cake. One of the main reasons to why she wants to kill Grydred is because the amount of EXP he gives will definitely be huge, especially since he powered himself up during the fight. Aram furrowed her brows a little when she saw Shiro glancing at Grydred as if waiting for a certain moment until it struck her. You're trying to steal the kill, Aram said as her eyes widened. You know that if you mistime it, you'll die, right? Aram warned seriously. Shiro only grinned before activating Shadow Cloak. Her body was wrapped with shadows before fading from their sights. Seriously, how many spells and attunements does this girl have? Aram couldn't help but ask. Shiro had demonstrated her prowess with ice, thunder, and shadow. Normally, people will only have one elemental attunement. A few exceptional people will be able to gain a second one, or like her, gain all 5 basic attunements. But cases like hers were rare since she had spent so long researching each element, along with frequent visits to the attunement hall in order to acquire all of her attunements. Not to mention, she had also used some of her connections to get items to help her sense the other elements. No, wait. She has a pet with her, and I'm pretty sure that pet belongs to the shadow element. But that doesn't make sense. Even if her pet is that of the shadow element, it doesn't make a dash. She shares skills with her pet. Aram widened her eyes in shock. Not many know about the fact that people could share skills with their pets, which is due to the fact that this is only applicable to top-tier pets. The only reason to why she knew was due to the fact that she had learned a lot during the time she was being taught by the professor when she was trying to fix her damaged links. Sighing heavily, Aram couldn't help but wonder what Shiro's background was. Not only were her mana links broken, which takes some skill for it to not be lethal for her, but also own a top-tier pet that could share skills. Meanwhile, Shiro, who was currently swimming towards the fight between the boss and the party, narrowed her eyes as she could tell that the boss was about to reach its limits. As an adventurer who had seen the effects of essence unleashed several times, she knew about the perfect moment to hit the boss for maximum effect. Taking a deep breath, she started to prep her spell now so that she could fire it the moment Grydred weakens. Since she was using Shadow Cloak, they couldn't see the magic circles that were forming around her body. She had to keep the magic circles close to her, or else they'll see it, and it'll expose her intentions. Closing her eyes and focus, she started to condense the magic circles. She remembered what Aram's magic circles looked like and started to construct her own magic circles using that as a basis. Now, snapping her eyes open, she saw the aura around Grydred flash a little before fading away. Shiro quickly clasped her hands together before pushing the circle towards Grydred. The magic circle sparked and separated into 5 identical circles that unfortunately only had 2 layers instead of the 3 layers that represent Tier 3. Grydred looked at the magic circles that surrounded it in fatigue. After using Essence Unleashed, it didn't have the strength to resist anymore. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Each of the circles shot 5 ice pillars into the body of Grydred before lightning sparked along it. Separating her hands, Shiro formed a claw hand and aimed it towards Grydred. A yellow magic circle appeared in her palm as she twisted her hand to increase its intensity. Asterisk BZZZ. Yura. Grydred roared in pain as smoke and lightning could be seen all over his body. Asterisk boom. Chunks of meat shot in all directions due to the sudden explosion near the abdominal area. Shiro, who was closest to Grydred at that moment, was slapped by a giant slab of meat which resulted in her being catapulted away. Her body was spinning all over the place as she struggled to reorientate herself. Frowning slightly, Shiro wondered what that explosion was. During her tumble, she saw the captain of the other party smiling slightly. Thurfker stole my kill, she thought in anger. Flicking her wrists, ice shot out which in turn acted as a foothold to stabilize her. Crouching down, Shiro jumped towards the captain with all her strength. Style Phantom Arts, 3rd Phantom plus 4th Phantom plus Shadow Cloak. The captain, who was currently excited about the fact that he had just bagged himself a bunch of EXP, widened his eyes in shock when he saw the face of Shiro up close. She was currently gnashing her teeth in anger with slight signs of her eyes being bloodshot. However, before he could even react, a silver light blinding his eyes. Asterisk Pushi. The party froze in shock when they saw the head of their captain fly off his shoulders. Shiro, who was currently in a state of anger, glared at the other adventurers. Flicking her wrists, the other 3 swords shot towards them with a silver glow. In a few short moments, Shiro took care of the survivors of their party. Taking a deep breath, Shiro retracted her sword. I suppose I can say I was just finishing the job. Shiro thought to herself since the original plan was for Grydred to kill everyone before they stepped in. Not to mention, they had attempted to steal their kill first. Even though she didn't get the huge amount of EXP from Grydred, she had leveled up once from killing the entire party. Name, Shiro. Race, Snow Girl, evolution criteria yet to be met. Title, Shadow Empress, Proficient Monster, 108/500 humans killed. Fratricide, 1 woman battalion, creator of the Frozen Hell series, incomplete. Level, 45. Class, Snow Girl, Snowmancer. HP, 123, 020/206, 250. MP, 120, 500/488, 070. STR, 1100, plus 100. VIT, 1300, plus 200. INT, 3000, plus 550. AGI, 1800-2000, plus 450. DEX, 1400-1500, plus 100. Def, 500, plus 100. Equals title bonus. Unassigned points, 300-0. Attunements. Ice Tier 2. Lightning Tier 2. Metal Tier 2. Shadow Ed Tier 2, augmented with Calamity's Will. Balance, 310,130,000 US dollars. Equipment, tap to display. Skills, Snow Girl. Tier 2 Ice Magic, passive regeneration, blessed by ice. Snow Magic, faded snow movement, cold aura, icy touch, icy breath. Ice field affinity, cold illusion. Snowmancer, dagger creation, nanotech engineering tier 2, sword creation, bow creation, heavy weapon creation, shield creation, armor creation, hand cannon creation. Frozen Hell series, Frozen Slumber, Azure Hellfire, Ancient Healing Arts, Fire of Life, Other, Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Mana Barrier, Lightning Magic, Tier 2, Metal Magic, Tier 2, Shadow Magic, Tier 2. Shared Skills, Een. Shadow Buff, Tier 1. Ice Chain, Tier 1. Shadow Cloak, Tier 1. Shadow Talon, Tier 1. Rift Walker, Tier 1. Absorption/Redirection, Tier 1. Shadow Affinity, Tier 1. Seeing her level increase to level 45, Shiro smiled in anticipation since it was time for her final star up. Snow Girl, enter the Truth Realm and defeat your shadow. Truth Realm? Shiro couldn't help but mutter at the unfamiliar quote. She didn't know the exact details of leveling up to the 5th star, especially since she was currently a monster, but she did know that it was going to be difficult. Otherwise, people wouldn't have been stuck on the 5th star for so long that they even had to completely restart their level from 1. However, seeing as the requirement was for her to defeat her shadow, she could infer that it was a quest to improve herself by defeating an identical copy of herself. Should be fun. She smiled. She always wondered what it would be like to fight an identical copy of yourself. Since they had the same experiences along with the same set of skills and stats, it would be the perfect moment to surpass her current fighting standard. I might even find some inspiration for new skills in there, she muttered. Shiro. Turning around, she saw the party swim towards her. Giving them a small wave, Shiro waited for Aram to explain their next steps. Well, since Grydred is dead, he should have dropped 2 items. The items are Ancient Scales and Ancient Sharidan Silk. If it's okay, can I have them? Aram asked with a slight praying gesture. Shiro nodded and pulled out several pieces of Ancient Scales and Ancient Sharidan Silk that she had received after killing the captain. Thanks. Right then, the next stage will be the treasure vault that was guarded by the now dead Grydred. Follow me. Following behind Aram, they arrived at a vault door at the bottom of the boss area. Was this always here? Lyrica asked as she didn't see this vault door before. Nope. This only appears after you kill Grydred, Aram replied. Waving her hand, a magic circle appeared on the surface of the vault door. All right, the combination of the vault lock changes each time, so this may take a while. The trio swam back a little as they watched Aram slowly break the lock on the vault door. Since she had nothing else to do for the meantime, Shiro flicked her wrist and created a foldable chair from ice and laid her body on it. Hey Shiro, can we have one as well? Lyrica asked. Nodding her head, Shiro made 2 chairs for Lyrica and Madison. After a while of waiting, Aram was finally able to crack the vault door. Gah, I swear, as fun as it was, it is annoying to do locks like this. Aram sighed as she cracked her neck. Well, let's go. Since we've unlocked the vault, we only have a few moments before it relocks and Grydred respawns. Aram informed them, whilst gesturing them to follow behind her into the vault. Are there any more bosses after this? Lyrica asked curiously. There are, but the things I need are at the start. All the bosses after this don't drop the items I need at all. However, if you girls are lucky, the vault should give you something that you need. Aram smiled. The group dived down into the vault and swam at a steady pace. They had to make sure that they were on guard in case of any unexpected surprises like an ambush from a party that arrived before them. Thankfully, their worries were for naught since there was no one inside the vault. Once again, watch out. It's a no-water zone, Aram reminded as she flipped her body so that she could land on her feet. Ha, fresh air. Well, as fresh as it can get, I suppose. Madison breathed out in relief. While they could breathe in the suits, it was slightly awkward. All right, look around, girls. Anything that is glowing with a golden orb above it is something you can claim. Aram shouted out as she walked over to the pile of loot and searched around. Looking around, Shiro couldn't help but frown a little as the vault was slightly familiar to her. Where have I seen this kind of design? She thought. Walking over to a pile of loot, Shiro saw a golden orb floating above the pile and knew that there was something she could claim. Shuffling through the pile of loot, her hands paused in shock when she saw the item. Mthurfking light hero. Shiro shouted out in anger as she slammed her fist into the item. Arya's lucky charm. LVL 50, blue? A lucky charm from the world, Arya. Records state that this is a statue of the light-bearing hero who saved the world. Will block a single fatal attack from an enemy. Limited to level 55.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.